Use calculus to find the absolute maximum and minimum values of the function, and then round all answers to 3 decimal places. The given function is f of x, which is equal to x plus 2 times the cosine of x, and it's on the interval between 0 and 2. So the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to find all critical numbers. So in order to do that, we need to take our function, which is f of x, which is equal to x plus 2 times the cosine of x, and then we need to take the derivative of that function. So let's take the derivative of that function. So f prime of x is going to equal 1. The derivative of cosine is negative, so it's going to be minus 2 times the sine of x. Okay, now in step 3, we're going to let this function 1 minus 2 times the sine of x equal to when f prime is equal to 0. So when f prime is equal to 0, and now we're going to solve for x. So if we subtract 1 to both sides, and then divide by negative 2, we get sine of x, which is equal to 1 over 2. And now we need to find out when x is equal to the sine inverse of 1 over 2. Okay, now remember that you're dealing with a triangle where the value of y is 1, and we know the value of r is 2. So therefore, this is going to equal the square root of 3. So let's determine what x is. Okay, so in order to determine what x is, okay, keep in mind that if you were looking at the unit circle, okay, so the value of, let's say, x over r would be the square root of 3 over 2, and then the value of y over r would be 1 over 2. Over here, this would represent the square root of 3, negative square root of 3 over 2. And this is positive 1/2. Down here, we would have negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. And over here, we have negative square root of 3 over 2. Actually, positive. Change that up. Positive square root of 3 over 2, and then negative 1/2. Okay, so because we are dealing with the positive 1/2, we are only concerned with the positive x values that have 1/2. Okay, and so with that, now we need to determine what is our angle. Well, recall here that this is pi over 2, negative pi over 2, and this is positive pi over 2. And so this angle right here would represent pi over 6, and then this angle would represent 5 pi over 6. So we want it to be in between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So therefore, we end up with x being equal to pi over 6. So therefore, this represents our critical number. Okay, now that we found our critical number, okay, now we need to find the values for f. So to find the values of f, we need to check the values on the interval on the function f. So using the function f of x, which is equal to x plus 2 times the cosine of x. Okay, we want to make sure that we can find, first of all, that f of pi over 6 is going to be our what? So that means if we plug in f of pi over 6, well, that's equal to pi over 6 plus 2 times the cosine of pi over 6. Okay, so what is the cosine of pi over 6? Well, that is x over r, which is the square root of 3 over 2. So we end up getting pi over 6 plus 2 times the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, let's go ahead and find that result. Okay, so if we take pi divided by 6, and then we're going to add 2 times the square root of 3, divide that by 2, and rounding that to 3 decimal places, we get 2.256. Okay, now let's find f of 0. So if we put in 0 plus 2 times the cosine of 0, we know that's going to be 2 times 1, which is equal to 2. And then we want to find f of 2. So that's going to be 2 plus 2 times the cosine of 2. So let's go ahead and evaluate that. So we have 2 plus 2 times the cosine of 2. And then we're going to round that to 3 decimal places. So when we round that to 3 decimal places, we end up getting 1.168. Okay, so what does this tell us? Well, we say that the critical value here, so in this particular value we have pi over 6, and it has a y value of 2.256. So this is going to represent your maximum value. Here we have 0, 2, and then we have 2, and then 1.168. So if this is the maximum value, then this is going to represent the minimum value. So let's check here first. Okay, so we're going to put in our values first. So we know that we have pi over 6 and then 2.256. We're just going to put on our order pairs. So we have pi over 6 and then 2.256. And then we'll label that point. Okay, and then we have 0, 2. And then the last one here is 2, 1.168. Now let's go ahead and graph our function. So we have x plus 2 times the cosine of x. Okay, so if you take a look here, okay, and let's just change our y-axis to go from negative 1.5 to 1.5. Okay, and let's take a look at our graph. So you can see here that the maximum is what the critical value number tells us in 2.256. And then in between 0 and 2, we can see that this represents the minimum, which is 1.168.